Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you with me here today for my first sewing video for a while. It's been a long time since I've recorded myself doing any sewing. That doesn't mean I haven't been doing sewing just kind of on my own, but I haven't recorded it. So this should be fun. And I definitely have gotten out of the swing of recording myself sewing, so this might be a little bit amateurish and juvenile of an attempt, but I'll get back in the habit of it and I'll get used to it again. But I do hope you enjoy. Now, as you can see, I am wearing my ball gown. This is not going to be a making of the whole ball gown. I didn't record that. I made it in kind of a hurry. However, I did record the making of the detachable train. So that's what you're going to see now. And then in the vanity footage, there will be close-ups of the ball gown as well. And before we do the video, I'd like to remind you all to like and subscribe and comment and share and turn on the notification bell so you can be notified of new uploads from this channel. Please follow me on Instagram, and my email is linked below in case you need to contact me. And a huge shout out to everybody who sponsors this channel on Patreon. Their names will appear at the end of the video.
To get the shape, I draped a piece of mock-up fabric on my dress form and fiddled with it until I found a design that I thought I liked. Once I had a pleasing design, I took it off of the dress form, unpicked the center seam, and used one half of it as a template to cut out one piece of the black velvet. I then used that piece of black velvet as a template to cut out the other piece of black velvet, which you can see here. Although I thought at the time that I had settled on a good shape, I would later come to realize that this train contains way too much fabric, by about 50%, so the shape I settled on actually was not the best. Because velvet is finicky under a machine, I decided to sew the two back panels together by hand, which you can see here.
Now, as you know, you can't really iron velvet, so I did my best to press this seam down by laying some books out on top of it. And you can see there's another piece of velvet placed face downwards so the nap won't get flattened. And this kind of worked.
I was, however, able to sew up the lining pieces by machine. I couldn't flatline the train because I needed to hide the raw edges inside, because there's a chance that the train will flip itself up and reveal the seam, and I don't want any unsightly raw edges to be exposed. Also, don't ask why I'm wearing a mask in my own home. I don't know why, although I'm sure I had a good reason. Now, in this clip, you can see me trying to lay out the entire thing on the floor and baste it all together, but I would eventually give up on this method. I just couldn't make all of the pieces lay correctly on top of each other. That's already hard enough to do at the best of times, and it was made nearly impossible by the fact that one of these pieces of fabric is velvet. So after getting frustrated a number of times, I eventually decided to rip all of my basting stitches out and try something new. I ended up just pinning all of the edges of the fashion fabric and the lining fabric together, and then pinning it up to the dress form to see what would happen, see what I got. It doesn't really show up well on camera, but there was a significant amount of bubbling and puckering, mostly bubbling, around the hem, so I set about the rather arduous process of adjusting all of the pins around the hem and easing that fabric flat, which I was able to do eventually. I then top-stitched the edges of the train together. It then came time to run gathering threads along the top of the train. After gathering the top of the train, I sewed on the little waistband thingy. I don't know what it's actually called because it's not a waistband. It was then back to hand sewing to finish attaching the waistband thingy. It's not attached like a normal waistband. Instead, it's folded over twice, so the velvet is the only thing that's visible. You can't actually see the waistband thing. It's just there to hold the gathers in place. I'll insert a picture so you can see what I mean. At this point, I realized that the train was just too long. I tried it on with the dress, and it just got all tangled up on itself. It picked up a lot of dirt on top of the velvet. It just looked awful. My friend Vasi Birchwood, who has made a similar detachable train, strongly advised me to interline it with stiff organdy. This was advice that I did not heed, and I severely regretted that decision at this point. But I did find a solution. I tucked up the train at the top to create this bustle effect that I'm going to tell people was a deliberate choice to create visual interest. That meant that less of the train drags on the ground, which means that there's less of it there to get tangled up upon itself. I also realized that there was just too much fabric in the train itself, so I folded the side edges over, or under rather, and tacked them into place. And this effectively diminished the train's volume by about 50%. So there was significantly too much fabric in this, and it just wasn't working. There was just, basically what was happening is the train was too big, too wide, too long, and all of that fabric was just tangling up on itself. Too wide, too long, and not stiff enough. So perhaps someday I'll unpick the whole thing and take out the excess fabric and add a proper interlining, etc.
But it is not this day.
I also added some synthetic horsehair braid to the hem just to stiffen it a little bit and, again, keep it from getting all turned over on itself.
I also sewed on this bit of white eyelet lace from Joann's. It was very cheap. This takes the place of a balayage. It's a dust ruffle. It just kind of protects the train from dragging on the ground. I didn't feel like making a whole new big one, and this one will work just fine because it's not really going to be seen. And with that, I think we should just jump into the vanity footage. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've got a couple more videos planned. I am jumping back into trying to jump back into my regular upload schedule. So yes, I hope you stick around.